Welcome to Mick and the Psychic, where we leave no stone unturned as we explore all things outside the apparent physical realm.
There is no intent to teach or make you believe or disbelieve anything. It is just a safe space to listen and explore with us.
So for this next episode, you have permission to open your heart and mind as you join myself and Xavier on this deep dive into the unknown.
There was a party happening and not one person acknowledged you. How would you feel? Pretty isolated, rejected. Don't make such huge promises that you can't make it. You know, just a small promise like I promise to hold my hand on you for 30 seconds.
We have a very special guest, Pia Kynoch, whose mission in life is to inspire and positively transform the way people think, live, and treat by teaching and sharing about human body interconnectedness and empowered wholeness. She'll get into what that's about. She's developed deep into learning about all aspects of the human body, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, and has traveled all over the world learning and gathering information from amazing masters. And I tell you what, with the physical, she gets really, really sciencey too. So, you know, just get your brain ready to expand and maybe take some notes. Pia is dedicated to helping people around the globe heal and revolutionize their lives in incredible, self-directed and consciously embodied ways. And her award-winning skills span many disciplines. So we've got naturopath, breathwork facilitator, holistic skin therapist, which is incredible, body worker, wellness coach, feminine embodiment yoga, NLP, functional nutrition, Qigong as well. Yeah. All right. Cool. A little bit of spiritual martial arts, I like to call it. Reiki, mindfulness, trauma-informed training, which is really, really important. And a lot of people need to be on top of this as well. And training with the Neuroscience Academy. But to talk more about, I guess, sciencey stuff and I guess bringing science to spiritual, to body, to wholeness, we have Pia. Pia, welcome to the show.
Intro.
Great to be here. Thank you.
It is really exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really interested in the whole bringing the science and holistic healing spiritual energy together, because so many people struggle with that. And so many people that I've come into contact with are either left brain or right brain, and they're not really good at merging the two together and understanding that so much about spirituality is based on science. So I was wondering if you wanted to talk about that, or what brought you to bringing them both together and teaching people about how it all works.
Yeah, I feel that the most important thing is just my relentlessly inquisitive mind. And the first universal rule is that everything is mind. Everything does come from thoughts. And the more that I learned, the more that I realized that our psychology is our physiology and our physiology is our psychology. You cannot separate the two. And for every thought that we have, there is a response occurring in our body. And we are literally a receiver of information. There is communication happening through every single pathway in our body all the time. And we can do things to either help or hinder that communication, and then the ripple effects that the helpful or unhelpful things then can have on our well-being. And that's our well-being psychologically, and that's our well-being physiologically. And I feel like there's just been such a separation between, I guess, spirit and body. And, you know, that really did happen, I guess, thousands of years ago, when religion was like, yeah, we've got the spirit. And then as science became more and more prevalent across our globe and research became more and more prevalent, they were like, yeah, we've got the body. And that distinction
shifted apart over the years. Yeah. Yeah,
it shifted apart. And religion has shaped our globe, you know, and cultures and societies and messages. And, you know, you add on to that, you know, and I don't want to segue too much, but patriarchy on top of that, and the suppression of women's voice, women's expression, and women being able to hold in their divinity the divine masculine. And so a lot of different unhealthy expressions and patterns and behaviors and imprints started to flow through every single level of our society, from the time of conception to the time of death. And within that, I feel that a key point is just the loss of connection to rhythms, particularly over the last 200 years since industrialization. Our connection to seasonal rhythms, the earth rhythms, the circadian rhythms are directly influencing the rhythms of our body. And so, you know, we've got peristaltic rhythms. You know, as soon as we swallow our food and it moves from our esophagus down into our stomach, we have no idea what's going on. Our body is moving into a rhythm for us. There's rhythms of hormones. Like we wake up in the morning because cortisol production is meant to go up, and that gets us out of bed. And at nighttime, it's meant to be melatonin that goes up and gets us out of bed. Women have the rhythms of their menstrual cycle. And over the last 70 years since the introduction of the oral contraceptive pill, and also interestingly, women's equal rights, where all of a sudden women were presented with this idea, this concept that they could have it all. And what does that mean? For most women that I've met, it means that they have worked themselves into the ground, that they have felt guilt and shame because they have either made the decision to go to work and have kids, or that they've made the decision to stay at home and have kids, or they've made the decision not to have kids. It doesn't matter where you go to. It's just like there is some aspects of guilt and shame that, again, often suppress women's cycles and women's expression. And that obviously is influencing what then happens with men and children. And so the rhythms and cycles of all of these different interconnectedness continue to flow. And even eating with the seasonal rhythms, a lot of people take no notice of that because we have artificial environments now that grow fruit and veggies. We have artificial storage environments to hold products. And a lot of people don't seem to still realize that when they go shopping at big chain supermarkets, often what they're buying is food that's been sitting in storage that has been gassed or like preserved in a different way.
Yep.
And they're eating something that really is quite deficient of light, like natural sunlight, and deficient of nutrients because of our agricultural practices that have decimated soil quality, and deficient of the ability to be really serving that person. So when you're eating that food, how is that really truly nourishing your rhythms and your communication? And so this is where I'm really into teaching and talking about ecosystem wellness, because it's not just us and thinking about our own selves as an individual. We have to really be considerate about how every single choice that we're making does have ripple effects. And it is either building and being helpful for and making our ecosystem more comfortable across all layers, from individual to local to regional to global. And again, you can zoom that back into the body, to cells, to tissues, to organ systems, to organism. Like it's the same, as above, so below. As
I was about to say that it's interesting when science comes out. They look at so much of, and I've said it a couple of times on the show because then it makes me seem more intelligent. I'll take my glasses off for this. Fractalization. But really, it's looking at what happens on a macro scale, and when you zoom in, it's happening on a micro scale. And it's interesting you talk about the body and the person. Makes me think of the planet as well as a body and a person, and how that's impacted and how that goes down on a micro scale as much as we do as well. And we impact the earth, and the earth impacts us as well. So it's
and even to go out further, like we're part of a galaxy, we're part of a network. And if you look at the cultures, like thousands of years ago, that built amazing temples, they built amazing agricultural practices based upon the planets, based upon astronomy.
Yeah.
Again, another aspect of our society that has really gone by the wayside. I mean, I have been to, say Machu Picchu, for instance, and I was so humbled by what I saw there. And I was like, we've got so much technology, we've got so much research, we've come so far as a, as a world, yet have we? They were so like way beyond their time. When our trajectory, I don't feel matches what they were doing. And I feel like it's because they were so connected to understanding the interlinking between the equinoxes and where the position of the sun and the moon were, and the position of the stars, and what that meant for human health. And this movement, again, this comes back to rhythms and cycles. There is movement happening the whole time. And if you look at human life now, there's so much stagnancy, there's so much sedentary behaviors, there's stagnancy in the food that's sitting in all of those storage compartments, there's stagnancy in the human body, there's stagnancy in emotional expression. People are so scared to be the truth of who they are. There's stagnancy in expression of voice, like speaking the truth of their heart. So if you look at stagnancy blocking movement, that is where so much dis-ease can really come into the playing of our current, diseased world. And, like I gave a presentation the other day on inflammaging, and, 1 in 8 Australians are living with chronic disease. And
So high.
About half of Australians, it's more than one. Like it's the stats are crazy. So if we were in a room with 8 people, at least one of us would be actually not very well at all. And
Yeah.
that is very significant. More than half of Australians over 65 are on polypharmacy, meaning that they're taking more than one drug, 5 or more generally. That's the kind of global stat actually for people over 65.
Yeah, right.
And so there is a lot of sickness in the world, even though longevity has gone up. And so how is that? Like, what is going on? So we're living longer, but we're getting sicker and sicker and sicker as we go.
Yeah.
We
And
love interviewing experts from different fields about all things outside the apparent physical realm.
And the one constant is these phenomena are transmitted through energy.
So we sought out and teamed up with Subtle Energy Science
To bring you, our listeners,
energetic encoded technology you can use on your phone, laptop, computer, or tablet.
turning your device into a powerful personal quantum energy tool. Now, we're not the creators, or are we qualified enough to explain it at all, but there is a mind-blowing number of scientific studies available on their website.
We get to try the range ourselves so we can give an honest review. And until the end of April, we've got 20% off The Mystic with promo code MATP-861.
And I love using the Mystic. I love it more than anything else. And I notice it really helps if you want to open up your heart or tune in to a deeper awareness.
Now back to the show.
I wonder, is there a correlation then, I guess, looking at this? Because I think there probably is some conspiracies there that are actually actual conspiracies around control and particularly the paternal side of things. You know, we used to rely on our women for wisdom, like they were the holders of wisdom, and now it's kind of like, oh no, they're baby makers and they're over here. We've lost so much of that wisdom. And but is a lot of this stuff, like particularly when we're talking about the food, I like to wave the flag a little bit for my, Mesopotamian friends that started civilizations. They had the best interest in heart, I think, at growing. And as civilizations get bigger, we need to store food. You know, our lifestyles will change. Is it? I'm not saying it's a good thing, but is it just a symptom of the way that we live now as a civilization, of more stuff, make it easier, even with AI. So AI can do more of the jobs so that we can relax more and do less. You know, is it a symptom of this growth in civilizations that now, how many people have these issues, the food intolerances, as well as inflammation issues and everything because of, most of the food that we can get is from the supermarket. I don't know how else to feed this many people in the one area.
Interestingly, there's actually a huge amount of surface area that is not utilized on city buildings. A huge amount of surface area that you could use to harness light energy, surface area that you could use to grow gardens. It is. There are some cities in the world.
So we're not trying hard enough.
That are implementing that, absolutely, and there's not enough funding. And this is again where the more people have more voice and the more people are asking curious questions, the more that we can create a shift in perception, and the more people are behind certain ideas, the more politicians will listen to that. And until that occurs, I mean, I personally have had quite a number of moments of feeling very, very frustrated and irritated by what I consider to be short-term planning. And even if you look at the infrastructure, I mean, I live on 160 acres in a suburb, just outside the metropolitan ring of Melbourne, which is in the bottom end of Australia. And we are currently being surrounded by housing estates.
Yeah.
The suburb that I live in used to literally just have a post office, a general store, and a little bit down the road, there was a very small little local supermarket. No infrastructure really. There was one kindergarten, I think. No schools. And so now the population has swollen by thousands, and it's growing by the day. More and more houses are being released. They're very small blocks of land. They're selling the Australian dream, and there is no extra infrastructure. There's no extra public transport. Like, we've got this huge spread, and often these are big houses on blocks where there are no gardens. There is no encouragement of using the nature strips out the front on the roads for gardens. They're building some parks, but again, we could use all of these different parks to create more community, to create more connection, for things that help humans survive, not just survive, but thrive. Connection is what builds communities. And again, there's so little encouragement of infrastructure. And they're looking at solving problems after the problem gets really, really bad. So what do we do when the roads get really bad? Like, the government will end up buying back houses or buying back land and demolishing the houses and making wider roads and bigger roads, or they will do that for train networks. They could actually be doing all of this sort of stuff now. And again, I view what's happening at that local or regional level as exactly what's happening inside of our body. There's a disassembling or dysregulation in our infrastructure. There is a lack of connection and communication happening between our different cells, tissues, and organ systems. They're just like the inner reflection and the outer reflection. And it's because people are buying into that. They're not questioning that. They're just going with the majority. They're conforming, and that's actually what happens in our body with inflammatory signals. Inflammation rises and it just keeps going if we don't do anything to address it.
Yeah, I mean, we think that, right? So because if particularly in the market we live in, without growth, everything crashes, right? So so there needs to be growth for the system to work. But that doesn't mean the system's right.
Yeah,
but you need growth for the system to work. And then so people just think, oh, well, it's, we're looking forward to the future, things will be better, we'll have better solutions. But the solutions we've got is we need to feed all these people, so we put more supermarkets in, and then more people are getting sick. And so, yeah, I can.
And is it growth or evolution or just a spread?
No. Spread.
And have a think about the rising cancer rates. What is cancer? It is dysregulated cells that keep growing.
Dis-ease, as you were talking about. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and you could call that, is that evolution or is that just dysregulated growth?
I don't know that evolution is necessarily always, and that's the thing about evolution, it's not always good. It's just evolving to something else.
Evolution actually is, if you look at evolution, across the eons that we know about, it is a very slow process and it's not linear.
Correct.
And so, again, there's movement in those pathways and all the different dynamics between galaxy, Earth, seasons, like all of those things are going to influence the evolution of an ecosystem, which is, like it's the ecosystem of evolution, basically. So different populations will go down, and that's the same as rhythms and polarities, like that's normal. And so when we're looking at evolution of ourselves, what do we need for evolution? We need resources. To hold resources, we need capacity. And how do you build capacity? Like that, you have to have space inside of you to receive.
Bulldozer.
That's the way. And so if you think about how tight and contracted most people are, how much muscular tension, how much, like literally like jaws, neck, shoulders, there is so much contraction, so much tension. And again, there's so much unresolved, unintegrated, unprocessed trauma that's being handed down through ancestral lineages, not just our own lifetime, but the lifetimes of DNA that is being held within us. And I really view the autonomic functions of our body, like the unconscious functions of our body, that they're mainly directed by our vagal nerve. And we can talk about that in a minute if you like. But the autonomic functions I really see as our survival-based instincts that are directed by our ancestral history, by our own unique life experience of trauma imprints. And those functions are being really put through the back of our brain. And the more that we're in a survival-based pattern, a fear-based pattern, the more that there's scarcity, lack, we're being pushed, or we feel challenged, or we feel overwhelmed, we don't have resources and capacity, we have much less access to our prefrontal cortex. And Bruce Lipton speaks about this really beautifully. Prefrontal cortex you could view as our unique identity. It is our impulse control or not. It is our creativity or not. It's our innovation or not. Like it's where we can, if all of our faculties and our neurobiology is working for us and we're feeling curiously alive rather than threatened,
we can make choices.
We have access to our predictive mind, like the analysis and judgment of all of our past experiences and behaviors and what that means for the present moment. But we also have access to our future, like what could happen, what else could be available. Can I trust and surrender into the abyss of the unknown? Can I stretch out of my comfort zone? And so this is where the connection to what's happening inside of your body, that conscious awareness, that interoceptive awareness, that neuroceptive awareness becomes really important, because when we're really unconscious, when our body's locked in bracing patterns that we might have been carrying since the time of conception and from birth, and we don't recognize that as an adult, when there's constriction and contraction through here, we are always going to be more in a survival threat-based pattern. And it's not until we start unlocking more of that we have more access to more of our brain, and we don't even use all of our brain, as they know. And so we just have so much more available to us when we are creating the space. And it's not just, like the space to receive the nutrients from your food. It's the emotional space. It's the spiritual space. Like, it's all dimensions of your being.
So is that like not being reactive and being more active in what you do?
It's being the co-creator. I guess it's understanding that everything is happening for you rather than to you. Because when you're in that it's happening to me mindset, you're being a victim. And if you're a victim, you've given away all your power. I mean, I've been in that position many times, and it's taken a lot of conscious awareness to reclaim my power from my past versions of self that just gave it away like, she was worthless, And so my journey has been the gathering acceptance and allowance of all my past versions of self and the people around me, instead of holding resentment and anger and distrust of why things happen to me and how things happen to me from the time of my conception onwards, and the dysregulated state that was created for me, not maliciously, like, hurt people, like trauma patterns get continued inter and transgenerationally because people don't have the capacity to change. They are stuck looping in those patterns. And so when I started creating that acceptance and allowance, it allowed me the ability to move into more of that forgiveness state. From forgiveness, you can generally move into more of that compassion that allows you to have insights. Even if you can't love what happened to you, you can be compassionate towards situations or people and have an understanding of why that might have occurred for them. And from that change in my physiological state, I have more capacity to receive. So if I am feeling threatened in my emotions, if I'm frustrated or if I'm angry, I am contracted, and my stress hormones mean that my body is redirecting resources to other places and spaces other than my growth evolution driven programs. Like, I'm not going to be in repair mode. I'm not going to be in receiving mode. I'm not going to be in nurturing or nourishing mode. I'm not going to be in reproductive mode. And so that redirection of resources, if that's happening to me all day, every day, because I'm being a victim, that is obviously going to take a toll. And that's going to lead to inflammation. That inflammation, if it's never rectified, is going to lead to different states of dysregulation and dis-ease in the body. And so if I had chosen to continue living the path that I was a chronic insomniac, I was a drug addict, I was an alcoholic, and even though I'd done so much learning, I couldn't quite overcome so many of my self-sabotaging patterns of behavior. It took me a really, really long time to gather the right knowledge from the right people, where all of a sudden I realized that my entire life I'd never felt safe in my own body. And this is a common thing when I bring
reacting.
when I talk to my clients, when I'm educating people. If you really ask that question, do you feel safe in the skin that you're in? Do you feel really comfortable in the skin that you're in? Are you happy in the skin that you're in? Most people are like, no. And when you ask them, when do you feel like that started? They're like, I feel like I've had that feeling my whole life. And that sense, that is a real, I don't know, when you ask that question, it can help people be aware that they've been disassociated, like their mind, has kind of been running around on a body their whole time. They have felt quite distinctly different. And I used to dictate my life from my mind. I intellectualized things. I thought that I felt things. It wasn't until I started learning embodiment practices and learning, through a nervous system and fascia lens, how to create safety in my own body so that I could actually land inside of me, that I was safe to sit in meditation or sit in breath work or sit quietly without my inner critic part of me giving me a really hard time about resting, stopping, receiving, instead of like constantly needing to give or people please or fix or insert whatever, scarcity, fear driven behavior. And so the ability for me to be able to finally stop in the skin that I was in and feel safer to learn more about the inner signals of my bodies, the inner rhythms of my bodies, that then gave me the power to start changing the patterns, because our nervous system is just patterns. It sends signals to the body and our, it changes our musculature, it changes our secretions, it changes all of these different things. And we can rewrite those patterns, but it takes that depth of connection between what's happening in our mind and what's actually happening in our body. And again, I feel like this is a really big missing piece in a lot of different therapies and a lot of different practices, and certainly definitely in a lot of the education that I've accessed, where people still miss out on the body. Like, what our body is literally responding to the habits of our life. Our body knows if we wake up in the morning and the first thing that we do is pick up our phone and we start, checking in emails and messages. It knows to produce more cortisol for us at that time. It knows that if we normally skip food, it won't produce digestive secretions for us. It redirects resources and nutrients, listening to the patterns and the habits of our lives. And we need to help our body relearn its safety in readdressing these patterns. Otherwise, our body is our survival tool. Like, we think a thought and our body is responding, but our body learns how to respond even like before that thought kind of comes in. And so it's the retraining of both. And I really want to highlight this for people, like touching ourselves, like holding ourselves, like learning how to really feel into like our own heartbeat, our own breath rate, like the cycles of literally each beat of our heart is a message to our body system. How we're breathing is a message to our entire body system. Our breath is entirely portable. It's with us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And
Hopefully.
over 20,000 breaths a day generally. Like, it's 20,000 opportunities, apart from when we're sleeping, we don't have the same opportunities to with our breath. But during the day, say 10 to 15,000 breaths for a lot of people. And a lot of people are breathing high and fast. So, that's pretty correct for a lot of people. That is 10,000 opportunities that we have to meet ourselves in a new way. And again, that most people have no idea of the power of their breath in terms of being a co-regulator for our entire system. And so there are some very simple, free, accessible, powerful tools that we have available to us to address our level of health and well-being. And again, like even connecting to the circadian rhythms of the planet, like being outside at dawn and at dusk. It's not just the entrainment through our eyes, which is, resetting our whole system. There's actually particular types of light, infrared light, that is working in our system to connect to our fascia. It changes the way water is communicating in our body. Like, there's so much in nature and just the cycles of light and dark. And again, that's pretty much accessible to every single human being, even if you live in a city. And it's certainly then if you spend a little bit more time barefoot on the earth, the benefits go up again.
I have to interrupt you for a second. Like, I'm just loving how you walk your talk, and you've been through so much yourself, so you actually like know what you're talking about. So, and then you've gone searching for your mentors, and I just love that. So if someone's listening going, oh my God, I'm so out of rhythm, I don't do all these things, but I love that you've just given so many different options of them to be able to start somewhere, whether it's being connected to just starting to connect with your skin and touch yourself and your breathing, eating seasonally, organic foods. Like, there's just so many areas, and it's at least it feels like what I'm getting from it is if you just start somewhere, when one area in your body and your life starts adjusting, you'll be able to tune into it more and then go to where you feel guided, because doing all those things at once when it's all new to you could be really overwhelming. All of a sudden you feel like your life might be a bit crazy, chaotic, because you're not used to doing all these things for yourself and connecting with yourself. Yes. And I wanted to bring up, so something I've really felt connected to eating seasonally and organic, and I started that for my family, my kids. And I remember when I first started bringing organic fruit and vegetables home, everyone in the household would start complaining about the food tasting different and the apples not looking as pretty and things like that. So this is my tip for parents and things at home. When you start doing that, to get used to, even my husband didn't understand, like, he loves his fruit and vegetables, and looking at some fruits going, why is that so small? Or why is that, like, the kids going, oh, but the skin's marked, I'm not eating that, because we're so used to the perfect, pretty, mutated fruit and vegetables that we get. And I honestly go to a mainstream supermarket and I look, and there's, like you're saying earlier, there's no energy or vibration because I'd see them as dead.
Oh, I want to share something with you that's, I feel like it will add an
Yes.
insight to people. So if you
Yes.
buy an organic apple or pick an apple off a tree and you were to cut that apple and leave it on the bench, within 5 minutes, that apple will start browning because of the oxygen that is reacting with the molecules in there. It's called oxidative damage, oxidative stress. Well, it's just oxidative changes. I don't like to say, like it's not just like it. Like it's a necessary part of life. And if this happened to me a little while ago where my sister came round, she had brought her kids, she'd been to the supermarket, a major supermarket near me, and had bought these huge, I've never even seen such big apples. They were so huge. And we were going off to the zoo that day. She doesn't live here. And so she cut an apple for her daughter and gave her half of it. She didn't want the other half. We came home, I don't know, 8 hours later. The apple was still white. There was no browning. There was
perfect. That's amazing. Where did they get this apple? This is great.
No
What's the
change
problem?
in that apple. And I was so horrified. Like that is not okay. And I mean, I definitely do believe in balancing the oxidative reactions in our body, because when we've got too many and they're unbalanced, we get radical oxygen species, and they are very helpful signaling molecules when they're in balance. But when they're out of balance, that's when a lot of dysregulated cellular states start happening. But in our body, that is a process that is meant to happen all the time, and our foods are part of that process. So if people are only eating foods that disable or dysregulate part of that signaling, you will end up having major issues with, particularly, I don't know if you've ever heard the word mitochondria before. A lot of people have heard them as like the powerhouse of the cell. It helps to produce energy, but mitochondria are actually some of the biggest producers of radical oxygen species. If they're not getting these balances of different signaling processes that are happening in our body, our energy gets less and less and less. But our mitochondria are our major communicators through our entire body system. Like they help to regulate cell pre-programmed cell death. It's called apoptosis, and that needs to happen all the time. Like we've got cells dying and growing and transforming all the time in our body, and it's a symphony. Like it needs to be like shaped and regulated in beautiful ways. And mitochondria are part of different regulating mechanisms across all different cells, tissues, and organ systems across our body. And so if part of what they're doing as part of their signaling process is dysregulated, our energy goes down. And you think about how many people they can get through their list of things that they have to do that day, but they're tired.
Yeah.
They are actually exhausted. They don't have vitality. Their cup feels empty. They also do not have capacity. They don't have flexibility or adaptability. They don't have capacity for evolutionary growth. They are just doing what they have to do because they do not have the energy to do anything else. They don't even really have the energy to think differently. Or if someone challenges them with a curious question, they view it as a confronting question, and it makes them go into even more defensive modes. And our stress response takes a huge amount of energy. If you think about, a stress response or even inflammation being like inflammation actually means on fire. So if you think about inflammation and our stress response being on fire, what does fire need to burn? It needs
oxygen.
oxygen, which is our inspiration. It is literally our inspiration. And when people are breathing faster to fuel inflammation that they don't even recognize that they really have, that again, that signals our stress hormone network going, oh, yeah, like we've got to respond here. Like even if she's sitting down, like she's running or he's running. Like
which is why, unfortunately, so many people that I talk to around smoking, they say smoking calms me down. And I say it does actually. You're absolutely right. The act of smoking calms you down. Cigarettes are doing the opposite, and you're sucking chemicals into your body. But the change in your breath and your breathing and breathing slower probably is calming you down. But they put the cigarettes with the calming down, but the cigarettes aren't. The fact that they're slowing down the breathing.
It's also the ritual. Our nervous system loves patterns. It loves
exactly.
It will
with fire as well. You've got fire. You've got all those things.
And you're activating it with the fire.
Yeah,
and honestly, there is sacred tobacco rituals. Like I
exactly.
I don't diss like plants, but if you look at actually a cigarette, it's full of so many carbs.
It's not really plants.
It's
a
not
30 pack of Winnie Blues
is
not a shaman in Peru.
No,
they're not smoking Winnie Blues. Yep. Well, they might be, but not ritualistically.
Yeah, and there's also,
Okay.
I mean, it's helping people recognizing that all of these behaviors that often we have a very strong inner critic about, like there's a part
Mm.
of us that judges our behavior, that is
Mm.
mean to us about that behavior, and another part of us is like, I need that behavior. I need
Yeah.
that behavior to
It's a
survive.
coping skill.
And again, and it's coping because there is a sense of overwhelm that's been building up in that body, doesn't know what to do with its expression of emotions or voicing of self wants, needs, and desires. And it's like, oh, I know what to do. I will eat, or I will overeat or undereat, or I will choose cigarettes, or I'm going to gamble right now. I'm going to hop on, do online shopping, or I'm going to insert protective mechanism.
Yeah.
Any kind of behavior that we're doing in deficiency or excess is what I consider to be a coping strategy. And that's beautiful. It's so helpful. Our body has helped us survive to this
It's
point.
got us to here. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But
And
what's
so
still serving you?
yeah, how can we honor that and say also we can create a little shift here so that this strategy of protection can turn from a survival-based pattern to a thriving-based pattern where this is useful for me, this is expanding me rather than contracting me and depleting me of even more.
Just making people be mindful and actually stop and think about why they're doing things. And that's the problem. People seem to just be too busy to think, well, I got to stop and think about everything that I'm doing now, like, and actually pay attention to why they're doing things and notice where it's coming from.
And honestly, being overcommitted is also a protective mechanism. I did it my whole life and I still can fall into
Many people do. Yeah.
that. And so just because I've got all the tools and resources doesn't mean that I'm living. I just really want to make sure people understand this. I have so many tools and resources. I have learned so much from so many people, and I am human and I'm living in a contrasting duality environment, and I am meant to go up and I am meant to go down. Life is not meant to be like a perfect, like if life was perfect, I would be stagnant because I wouldn't be doing anything. And so
you have no reason to try to figure out what you need to work on.
totally. And every new identity that I embody, and I was talking about this with some friends last night, I look back at my past versions of self and I'm like, I don't even know whether I could have a conversation with her. Like we'd be on such different frequencies. Like I don't even, it makes me laugh at times where I'm just like, wow, like I am so different now. I have built so much capacity. I have built so many resources. That is an ongoing journey. It's not just about, I used to be so intent on outcomes, and now I'm just like in as many moments as I can during the day. I'm like, can I be a little more present to this moment of my journey? And I could be struggling. I could be overwhelmed. I mean, I live like I've got a lot of things happening in my life. I've got my fingers in many pots. And yeah, like there's just I'm that kind of person. I kind of thrive being on the edge of my capacity. And so that is the path that I have chosen, and I choose it intentionally. Whereas in my past, it was very unconscious, and I was driven by my fear of being found out that I was unworthy or funded. This is my past version of self believed fully that I was unworthy to receive love, unworthy to rest, unworthy to stop, unworthy to receive. So I constantly had to give, and being overcommitted and so busy, I couldn't feel, I couldn't think. And I was so scared of that. And that was such a body habit that anytime I was brought into the precipice of like, oh God, I'm going into a place where I could feel more, I would back away from it. Like that's where my self-sabotaging protective mechanisms would come in and be like, you know what, let's go off and do this instead. Let's get really tired so that you can't make those choices. Let's do one more course so that you can't do the next thing. And yeah, I think that is really normal, like whether you're a sympathetically nervous system driven person and you just go, or you might be completely lacking resources and be more like, I can't get out of bed. Either of those states are blocking you from the fullness and the richness of who you are. And I feel like every single person I've ever met has come out with some imprint where they felt like they had to modify the truth of who they were and had to do things to be accepted or more loved, or like the conditional love that was placed upon us. If you do this, if you say this, if you dress this way, if you educate yourself this way, if you don't educate yourself this way, it depends on the socioeconomic groups that you're part of. Really, like there's all of the adverse child experiences studies that correlate all of the different aspects of our life where we did feel overwhelmed as children, and how much that trajectory shapes inflammation and disease across the lifespan of a person. And this is why I love being trauma informed. This is why I love helping people understand so much more about what was happening at the time of conception for you. Like tell me like anything about your birth story, and I'll be able to let you know what's going on for you now as an adult. So people can start having a little bit more validation to their process. Like I have found out things about my genetic pathways and my methylation pathways, for instance, that have helped me understand why I was such an addict for so long. Like I literally had an imbalance that I never knew about that was driving chronic insomnia. Like that, obviously, if you're not sleeping, you don't feel safe.
Yeah.
And that was over the entire course of my life. Like even from a little kid, I just didn't really sleep. I didn't ever really feel safe. And so unpacking that and giving people valid physiological reasons for their psychology can be so helpful, so reassuring, and can help reduce that inner critic, that inner judge who's been like, look at you, you're not doing all the things, or other people have it so much better, or you've learnt this and you're still not actioning it. Yeah.
I like to call that the itty bitty shitty committee.
Yeah.
And they're still going to be there, but it's just whether or not they got a microphone or they just bicker amongst themselves in the background and just don't give them much power, because they'll still be there.
I would love to bring this in. So when my itty bitty shitty committee comes in to talk to me, I also talk to my body. I'm like, where are you feeling this the most right now? In what way could I, like, say I've got a pillow behind my back right now. So say if my stress response came up in this conversation where all of a sudden a part of me was like, oh, and I'm an imposter in this moment and they're going to find out that I don't know anything. Then where in my body does that bit live? And could I even just put a hand there? Like without going deeply, without going into it too deep. We're obviously navigating the conversation right now, but in what way could I just place a hand on myself or a hand on another area and just say, I hear you and I'm feeling you and I'll come back to you later. Like that, this is just an internal conversation that I could be having. Or just like we all just want to be acknowledged, every single one of us. And I like to make this example, like if you walked into a room and it was a party happening and not one person acknowledged you, how would you feel? Like pretty isolated, rejected, like useless, abandoned. And so this is what the parts of us that, and Richard Schwartz talks about this beautifully in internal family systems, but the different parts of us are navigating their experience of communication so that they can be acknowledged. And it doesn't mean that they have to take over our system. It just means that we can, during any part of our day, be like, oh, I got you. I feel you. And if you don't have the capacity or the resources to deal with that part or have a conversation or communicate with that part, then if you say, I'm going to come back to you later, then you have to show up for you. You have to show up for your part. Otherwise, it just increases this deep sense of connection where you feel over and over again that this part of you feels betrayed, unseen, rejected, suppressed, disavowed, pushed out. And so if we make promises to ourselves, in what way could we make that commitment a reality? And don't make such huge promises that you can't make it. Just a small promise, like I promise to hold my hand on you for 30 seconds. And that's all I can do right now. If that's okay with you, then another day I'm going to be able to do a little bit more.
This sounds like parenting. So it's like you're reparenting yourself.
Absolutely got it.
It's interesting. I was literally running a meditation last night with a group, and a reading normally comes up. And of course, the reading was exactly what we were talking about in meditation. It just happens. All right, cool. And there's a reading from Rumi, who's a 13th century Sufi, like amazing. And it was interesting because he was talking about before we go into the fire, we need a warm bath, and that we always have an intermediary. And it was interesting where he was talking, and I was wondering where some of this was going, and it's going exactly to what you're saying now. But another one is around where he was talking about for us to really feel and experience, we have to walk through the garden to feel. And it's almost like, what are we doing here as humans, particularly when you experience trauma and other different things? We need to be here as humans to be able to feel for another higher part of ourselves. Like that's part of it. And awareness is the first point of any kind of change is awareness. And one of the hardest things, I think, for people, sometimes we're thrown into awareness by a horrific thing happening and we're forced to look at something. Sometimes we don't, we're forced the other way and we go the other way and we avoid it and have our other coping mechanisms. But with awareness, it's actually really, really difficult. It's like if someone says, I've got a serious relationship issue that like keeps coming up, I keep putting myself into this. And it's like, well, what's wrong with you? It'd be like, I don't know. And what you're describing is like, this is a part of awareness. It's like, where do you feel that? You know, like starting with the body and then being able to like physically start, okay, feeling it in your gut or your heart or whatever, like starting with the body. And then it's almost like the warm bath to the fire is the thing that's not even right in front of us, the thing that we're wearing, the body. There's so many indicators of what's going on. So you're saying that there's so many ways that we can work with the body to work out where parts in our life is unbalanced and then start working through there. It's almost like a starting point to get down to the crux of it rather than just looking at the whole issue and just going, well, I don't even know where to start.
Absolutely. And I also just want to acknowledge that even for some people hearing that, like the feeling of ourselves. So I like if someone had said to me, oh, let's work on your grief. I mean, I couldn't cry.
Where do you even start? But where do you even answer that?
Yeah, totally. And so what I want to share with people is that this, when you're working with someone who is trained in this, it is a titrated experience. So titration is like a medical term, and it's all about dosing, like the amounts and how much you have the capacity and resources to receive. And in somatic experiencing, they use the word pendulation. And so if you think about what it is that you've been avoiding or not feeling or not experiencing or not processing or integrating in your life, this big dense thing, and then the other side of that is awareness. And so how can you go from awareness and just touch the thing and just then let it go and come back into awareness? And so this is the softness. So in my journey, like at the beginning, and no wonder I was still very much navigating addictions, because I was like, yeah, let's get in there and do the work. Let's scoop out all the things, all the bad stuff, because I need to be fixed. I'm broken. Like I want to be, like I'm going to be healed. If I just get in there and go deeper, go harder. My motto used to literally be go hard or go home, and like a lot of people, like it really, it's not uncommon again. And so what I really deeply recognize and honor now is that generally the softness can create so much dissolving, that the subtleties can create very powerful ripple effects across the surfaces and underneath of us. And again, it's the acknowledgement, the acceptance, the allowance of that is there. I acknowledge you. I accept that you're there. I allow you to be there without needing to change you. In this moment, I'm just saying that, hey, I see you. I'm not changing you. I'm not saying that you're broken. I'm not saying that you're ugly. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, yes, you're there. And then as you get practiced with that, then you can start moving into what might it feel like to feel your body. Some people are so dysregulated that touching themselves can be very, very challenging. And so, I mean, I'm sitting now with a pillow on my lap, so it's perfect. I can pull it up and show you, but I might ask people to put a pillow in between their hand and their heart. So you've got, you've just got something to be a mediator, be a little guide, be like a soft landing, just kind of what you spoke about, like that warm bath. And then how could then that pillow could end up being smaller or whatever it is. Like all we're looking for is some curiosity. What else could work? What else could feel more comfortable? What else could feel more helpful? What else could feel more expansive? And also to recognize that if it feels contractive, if it feels hard, if it feels challenging, that's also okay. And people have, I know I do also myself sometimes fall into using these words positive and negative when it comes to emotions, but I like to consider them as being helpful or more unhelpful, but recognizing that our emotions is just energy moving through our body. It's sensations. It's the imprints of learning from our family unit and from society that have put labels on what is good and what is bad. At the end of the day, it's just energy moving. It's literally just information. And when we can reduce the scariness of that, like so many people are holding on to so much anger and resentment that they've built up over the course of their life, where they've swallowed the truth of who they are. They've swallowed their expression of their boundaries, their needs, their wants, their desires. And that's living inside of them. And they're so scared of it. They're like, oh my God, if I was angry, I might chop people's heads off, for instance. Or I don't know what I would do. I might destroy my house. I feel so overwhelmed when I move into touching this anger. And so how can we go in there even more softly, and then start working with more of the processes around how to externalize that, even like tangibly writing out things that make you angry. Like there are so many different avenues that we can go into, just softening the bigness of what is in there. And it usually feels really big because it's in a dark room all by itself with the door shut. And every now and again we come and open just a little bit of the door and we're like, oh my God, there's a boogeyman.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if we can just
not everyone wants to do that and deal with it. And then we've been taught from childhood, when you're naughty, go to your room, be in that room by yourself, and don't come out until you calm down. You're not held and loved unconditionally in that space when you have those negative emotions. So just the simple act of learning how to deal with anger and still love yourself anyway, it can be so confronting for people. So I love that you can recognize in them where they might need to do their baby steps and the different levels. Really
totally.
nice.
And that's the same with crying. And like there's a lot of people who don't know how to express grief in a healthy way. And often if we don't know how to express emotions in a healthy way, it comes out sideways. Just FYI, it always will come out, but it'll come out sideways in a
An ugly crying.
it's just in an unshaped container. And it has to still move. That is because it's energy. But also even say in my family, sickness was completely not accepted. Like we were not allowed to get sick, basically. And so
no time to get sick, because
no time to get sick. And if we ever hurt ourselves, it literally, there was no sympathy. It was like, chin up, buttercup, like move on. And so I wouldn't ever allow myself to be not okay or not be able to present okay. So I had such a strong mask, a personality identity that I created that matched my physiology. Every mask that we hold in different presentations of life has a certain physiology. Every part of us that presents at different times with different people in different moments has a physiology that goes with it. It has a posture, it has a breath rate, it has different hormone signaling, like it is all matching. And so that physiology meant that I was unable to ever downregulate. And that was part of why my stress response dictated my life, because interestingly, stress, when it's regulated, is quite anti-inflammatory for us. Like we're meant to move through challenges all the time. And it actually, if you think about the example of, say, if someone has a tummy bug and they have diarrhea and they are like expelling really fast from their system, and then all of a sudden a tiger jumped into the bathroom where they were at, they are not going to be following the impulses of their immune system in expelling from their body at that time. They are going to get up and run. And so normally an acute stress response will suppress our immune system and be like, that's not as important right now as saving your life. And so this is where this constant chronic stress response ends up being very dysregulated for our immune system.
Is that why you are very, because I know your wording has been very careful, particularly when you're dealing with the body and maybe subconsciously, where it's almost like you're thanking that part of the body for its message, because that part of the body's not doing anything wrong. It's got your best interest at heart, even if it's seen socially as a bad thing, or even if you feel like it's a bad thing because it's holding you back in life. That part of your body or that thing that you're doing is actually just trying to serve you as well. So is there something in the awareness of the role of what that's doing and the compassion, even just for the process in your body, that helps you, I guess, transcend the issue? Like, or is that
I've
just...
got a couple of things to mention here in case someone's never heard of the book, Your Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. That is an amazing book, and most people find that very transformative as they're reading it and moving through that process of awareness. And my beliefs again about the vagal nerve, like this inside here, inside like the middle part of our body is our intuition. Like our heart is our feel. Like we've got our cognitive center, our intelligence center, you know, held in our brain, like with different neural connections. But that sympathetic nervous system and that central nervous system is running down our spine and is still communicating with the rest of our body. So again, the separation of the mind and different compartments of the mind being different from the body, I do not subscribe to that theory. And if you think about the front of the body and the vagal nerve connection, the heart, which, as I'm sure any of us have ever felt, a heart shock or a broken heart, like it can
actually
ache.
really feel it in your actual heart. Yeah.
Yes. And I've done healing processes where I've tapped into the grief from my childhood, that I literally felt like my heart was going to break. Like I actually, it was hurting me so much to feel how much grief I'd been holding on to since I was a little baby, that it was an incredible experience for me to be able to allow my heart to unlock that burden that it had been carrying for so long. And that expression of that grief then allowed me to be able to hold and maintain more joy in my life. Because again, like every contrasting experience, you know, like for every emotion, there's an equal and opposite emotion. And if we're not prepared to explore and discover, you know, one end, it means that we can't really explore and discover the other end. We're just really in this tight little, you know, boundary, because we're like, oh God, I can't go over there. If you can't go over there, you can't go over there.
So that it's nearly Newtonian then, in what you're saying with emotions. Like it's got to go all the way. So Newton's law. Yeah, like
right.
every action and has an equal and opposite reaction. Yeah.
Yes. And that, I mean,
Wow.
again, so
interesting.
Positive and negative, like that is actually what drives cellular behavior. And so masculine, feminine, like birth, death, like this is literally like, this is what creates our human experience of this universe. And that's why we are living in duality. That's why we are living in contrast. And this is why it's our journey to open our perspective, like by being that curious explorer, by being prepared to ask questions, by being prepared to feel. And so when we do that, then the wider our perspective, the more we can find, where is my balance point in this? My balance point is going to be different to yours. I prefer living on this side. You prefer living on that side. But if I've explored both ends of my arena and all sides of my arena, then I can choose, along with my body, where I'd like to play. And I can recognize more fully when I'm engaged with the communication of my body. I'm like, ooh, I've just moved into a situation that feels less helpful to my life. I can feel my contraction. I can feel my eyes glaze over, or my mouth get really dry, or my heart rate go up, or my breath rate change, or like the tension in my shoulders come in, and all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, something's out of alignment here. What is my body expressing to me? And what is it that I might need to adjust? What is it that I might need to express? What is it that I might need to change? Do I need to remove myself from this situation to calibrate to what's going on? What is it that I need? And our body is literally communicating these signals to us all the time. And partly this is also going to be the lens on which we view the world. So with neuroception, like our beliefs around how threatening or dangerous we believe the world or other people, our nervous system is listening to those signals. So this is why, again, it's that mix of psychology and physiology. You can't, you need to be working with them both together. Felt like I wanted to share something else as well. Going back to the intelligent mind, the feeling mind of the heart, intuitive mind of our belly. You might have heard the belly being called our second brain. Our head brain's got about 86 billion neurons. Our heart has about 40,000 cardiac neurons, and our belly has about 500 million neurons.
That's why I'd always get bloated when I was stressed out. Like I'd always feel it in my belly straight away.
Yeah. And a lot of people override those signals, and you override them enough times and more things begin to happen. That's definitely not uncommon. And so each one of these nervous system centers, they are big. They also can act, they are independent as well as being interdependent. So they need each other, but they can make decisions on their own. And our heart sends more signals to the brain at only 40,000 cardiac neurons than our brain with 86 billion sends to our heart. Our heart is the greatest, and again, size-wise, has the greatest electromagnetic frequency resonance of any of our organs. bigger than that of our brain, which so many people put so much emphasis on their brain and their intelligence. And yet it's our healing center that has so much to do with that. But what's happening in our heart has a direct interrelationship with what's happening in our gut.
And it doesn't make sense why a pump, it's like if the heart is just a pump for blood, why would it have all of that energy?
Also, too, you know, like if our heart stops beating, blood moves around our body for up to 10 minutes.
Yeah. So what's it doing? Interesting.
So that is, and that's
so it's interdependent on
quantum biology.
Yeah. I've read
so,
Bruce Lipton as well, so it's okay. It's not from me.
Yeah. I mean, and science, like honestly, quantum biology has come a long, long way in terms of what they understand and the movement of energy. And this is where our fascia system and structured water and other things.
That's another podcast. Oh my gosh.
That is a whole other podcast.
That's right. We're going to talk about the fascia system. We haven't got there.
I know.
Yes, we might have
that's another podcast. We can't cram you into one
so much
segment here.
I really want to bring it back to the belly.
So, do that, yes.
Please.
Gut,
so if you think about our heart being our feeling center and then our belly being our intuitive center, so many people have dysregulation through their digestive system. Like basically it's ubiquitous across the world. And so the signals that are coming from these lower down centers in our belly, they're called afferent signals through the vagal nerve, which means that they're going up to the brain. And we've got about 80% of the signals of the vagal nerve going up to the brain. Interestingly, they are unmyelinated nerves, which means that the signal moves much, much slower, which means for us to really listen to what's going on inside of our belly, to listen to the intuitive signals, like that gut response, this is right, this is wrong, yeah, this is okay. We need to stop and listen. And again, most people do not do that. And I also want to bring it back. If you've got a threat response happening in your belly because you've got microbial dysbiosis, you've got a leaky gut because you've just eaten heaps of gluten or you've just drunk heaps of alcohol, like different things that we are inputting into our system will also create that block to our intuitive center. If we're blocked to our intuitive center, we're going to be naturally blocked through our heart center because our vagal nerve is listening to all of that communication and being like, oh yeah, we need to create more inflammation rather than less. We need to create more of a stress response rather than less.
Yeah. Is this why when people go, and like myself as well, go on a retreat somewhere and they have like the food stuff and everything, and you're doing yoga, and it's like there's a place there, and there's nice views, and you've got people around, you're doing yoga each day, but there's something about it where you're just so much more connected and everything, and then you come home and eat McDonald's and that's like it's all gone. Is part of that like that food that you have as well, is that going to have an instant effect when you eat well, or is that like that, or is it over time you have to eat over a long period of time?
The food that we're eating, literally our body and our microbiome systems, our digestive secretions are incredibly dynamic. They are listening to all of the signals that we're putting into it. So what you eat, but also how you eat and the timing of your food are all very important things. And honestly, we could do a whole nother podcast just on those three things.
There you go. Yeah, cool.
There's a lot going on.
And the yogis had that, right? I mean, the Vedas, they've got all of that. There's so much around what you eat, how you eat it, when you eat as well. And it's in touch with spirituality. So obviously there's a connection.
And I also want to bring it back even to the chakra system. So if you think about like from our lower belly down, being like our sacral and our root chakra, and our root chakra being like our sense of belonging in ourself, our sense of belonging in our tribe. It's really related to our survival or thriving instincts, like our sense of stability, security. And if we don't have that, that is also going to be intimately related to our digestive system, also to our sacral system, which like is more related to our sexual reproductive centers. When we're stressed, sexual reproduction is a lot harder. Infertility rates are growing across the world, and it's also related to our inner child expression, our expression of our imagination, our creativity. And so we're really blocking that flow when our digestive system capacity and our sense of safety in our own self is not working. And again, we don't need to talk about it today. It's a really big conversation, but when a child in the womb is getting lots of different signals saying, yeah, you're going to be born, you are currently in a threatening environment, or you're going to be born into a threatening environment, it changes neural development and fascia development and muscular system development. We're born in bracing patterns. We can learn them from childhood onwards. It doesn't always just have to happen in the womb. There's many other times and incidences that could occur. But if you have bracing patterns, if you think about tightness all the way through the fascia of our belly, or even through our hips or through our knees or through our ankles, if you're really tight through the soles of your feet, if you've got knee problems, if you've got hip problems, you're going to have digestive system problems, because that's how the fascial network works. And so that is going to change your ability to utilize food, to digest it, to metabolize it, to excrete it properly. And it's not just the food that we're excreting, it's also hormones and other toxic things that need to leave our system.
Yeah, that's all mixed in there.
And again, think about the cycles. So something comes in, something goes out. And so it's all like we need to create these balances of awareness between what is coming in, not just nutritionally, but like our emotions, our environment, like, you know, the EMF exposure that we're part of, the toxic particulate matter that's coming in, and how is my body able to let go of what it doesn't need emotionally, physically, you know? So it is absolutely all interrelated. And so many people I know in the spiritual realm, and this was me, I was so dysregulated, like through my survival system. I didn't feel safe in my body. I didn't feel like I really belonged in my tribe. I was hyper independent, craved connection, had so many friends, but that deep, intimate relationships, I was just like, no. If you knew me, you would probably realize that I was actually not worthy and fundamentally flawed. So I had all of these, you know, these patterns that blocked me from really my lower chakric system and my digestive system. And I found it so easy to get out of my body. Took drugs, took alcohol, had healing sessions, breathwork sessions, like all sorts of things that I was like, yeah, let's get out. Let's get up into the galaxy. I love quantum work because I was like, woo, I'm with my galaxy.
So many things up here. What about Mother Earth?
So ascension is just as important as descension, because again, we need to find our balance between those two axes. Everything
beautiful,
like, you know, is just about these beautiful different
above and
points.
below, duality, masculine, feminine. It's just you
Yes.
can't just be all up here. Like I remember thinking about it with my clients. I do their chakras and do their crown, and like some people you come across and you literally could tell them, I just saw a fairy shoot out of your ass, and they go, oh wow, really? Because it's so valuable. There's so much up here because they're all connected to their crown, like bringing him down and teaching about grounding and connecting with their physical body and the earth and releasing. Just important.
we have to walk through the garden to feel. It's that thing, like we have to be here.
And I feel like this is really important too from a practitioner point of view. Like my capacity and my resources is what I'm sharing with my clients. Like I take what I do very, very seriously. I take living my best life very seriously. And also fun and playful. Like I don't want to say like it's just all serious and dense and dark, but I really am embodied in what I do. I'm really conscious about what I do. And I feel like that's important for clients to ask questions of their practitioners around like, who are you? Like, how do you live? And that, because that's being transferred. And I also want to speak into how many practitioners burn out because they feel like they're constantly giving rather than it being a co-creative connection.
I did that.
When you're both receiving from each other, it also helps to dismantle the guru and pedestal template. Like I'm a facilitator, I'm a guide, and I've walked a million different paths and I've walked them to the nth of their degree. So I've really created a lot of different maps of different landscapes, and I can provide you the map that I've been on and say, hey, I feel like you're going this direction. I just want to let you know I've mapped out a landscape of something I've experienced. You could turn left, you could turn right, you could go a different direction, or you could keep doing whatever you're doing. I just want to let you know that I've had these experiences in this landscape that I feel like you've got a lot of similarities with. I'm not trying to be like, I know so much about body.
Which ironically is a Western guru. A guru doesn't do that. A guru is literally just holds a mirror and leaves it to them. You know, it's tough, but it's so true. You get that a lot. And I think, Pia, as well, the how is so important, and how you do things, and particularly people who have experienced trauma, and trauma comes in so many different shapes and sizes and affects people differently, obviously.
Where the why is just as important.
And I think as well with I always get this kind of metaphor of a really shallow stream, and you need to drink. You have to be gentle with that stream, otherwise you just pick up all the mud and you're just drinking mud. And I feel like, you know, your gentle approach to people, based on where they're at, how shallow that stream is. You know, that's just so important, because we can just dive in and go, let's do it, and you end up bypassing the whole
Actually,
process.
I also just want to say, I love that you brought in water, because I really believe that, you know, like water and light, like they are the key components of what drives cellular health, human health, well-being, like they and movement, obviously. But water, interestingly, they conservative estimates are that about 75% of the population are mildly dehydrated, and then about 50% of the population are chronically dehydrated.
Yeah, wow.
Without water in our system, we are going to be blocked from healing. And I find it really interesting, so many people that I look after that are interested in being high vibration, highly consciousness. If you think about that analogy of, like, you know, whales sending songs hundreds of kilometers across the ocean because it's pure water. If they were trying to sing those songs in mud,
Or Coca-Cola.
Yeah, or how far do you think that song's going to go? Who's going to hear it? And that's what's happening with ourselves, but that's also what's happening in our communities. If we're dehydrated, our cognitive capacity goes down. Like, that's a scientifically validated fact. Like, we just do not have the same thinking abilities when we're dehydrated, let alone the same body communication abilities. We are much more likely to more easily move into a stress response, a threat response. When we're in threat, we're not able to grow. We're not able to bring in resources for our growth and our development and our co-creations and our creativity and our expression. We're just using resources to get by, to just survive this moment.
And as with food, like you're saying about water, how about the quality of the water that we're drinking, where it's coming from? And
another podcast.
Another podcast.
But just what goes into hydration. It's literally the way that you're breathing. It's the electrolytes that you have in your system. It's the toxic impacts of other things that are taking that water. It's also the health of structured water. I'm not going to so much, but it's like the fourth phase of water in our body that helps cellular communication. It works like a battery charger inside of our body. That is sitting on the edges of our cell membranes. So cell membranes are made of fat. They are hydrophilic. They love water. They love it when water's around them. They're like, I'm fat, you're water. Let's get together. Let's be friends. If the structure of our fat membranes, our cellular membranes, is impaired, it's a little bit harder for that relationship to be really bountiful and beautiful. And this is where, again, this is our foundation. This is our structure. Like, what are we made of? What are we putting in our mouth that's creating what we're made of? You are literally what you eat, but it's also not just as simple as that. You are how your body can actually digest those nutrients.
Yeah, how do you turn that into a person? You know, how's DNA going to turn that into
amazing food.
more
I used
cells?
to go to yoga 6 times a week. I literally, if you looked at who I was in that stage of my life, you'd be like, wow. People who just met me on the surface, they were like, Pia is so healthy. She's so amazing. I mean, I never left the house without a bag of cocaine in my wallet. I used to drink more than one. I used to go to the bottle shop and buy 3 bottles of vodka at a time in case I ran out. Like
and doing yoga and everything.
Yeah, doing yoga 6 or 7 times a week, eating all organic food, making all of my own food, riding my bike to work, like literally tick.
All the okay.
And the way that I could digest and absorb my food and my nutrients is so limited. I didn't have capacity because I was in a stress response the whole time. And this is where I meet people who are like, I'm doing all the right things. I'm living a low tox life. And I'm like, yes. And there's some other reasons why your capacity is really held back right now. Your nervous system, your fascial system are really dictating your response to receiving. And so we need to work on why that's blocked. Like, what's going on for you? What's been your life journey where your nervous system is like, no, I can't let that in. Or I'm feeling like I'm in such a threat the whole time. I'm just getting by. I'm just trying to live here.
Yeah. All right, so we have to wrap it up here, or it'll be.
It's so sad.
This is going to be like an 8-part series.
So many different topics that we have to talk on. Like,
you'll be
I get so excited.
Oh man, your energy has been absolutely amazing. I'm sure people will just be like wanting to watch this again, take notes, because like there's so many different tips and amazing insights, and then reevaluating. Like, I need to come and see you. Brain's just going 100 miles an hour, which is so fantastic. So
take a breath, please. Take a breath.
Thanks very much.
Honestly, like now's the time to be like, it's okay, body. We've got time to come back.
Exactly.
Into action.
No rush.
not possible to action it all at once. All I can do is just take this moment and make one small choice in this moment. Yeah, one small sip of that stream.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's, again, I used to do this to myself all the time. I'd listen to something, I'd be like, I'm going to action everything today. And I
Yes.
would get so overwhelmed that I wouldn't action anything at all after 2 days. And I'd
Without
just go,
cocaine and vodka. You
You
can
can
action
have-
everything with cocaine and vodka, but
Yeah.
you've already been down that path. You've mapped it out. You can go that way.
It was
Didn't work
vodka.
out.
Oh, you know, the clean stuff.
Just to
That's
be
fine.
clear for YouTube, she's
Oh, I
saying it
used to
didn't work
justify
out.
it
Just
to
before you
myself.
take us
You can
down.
justify it.
Before you take us down. Yeah.
I love that you've helped me, and I'm sure other listeners reflect on like maybe the steps that they have taken so far. Like you reminded me to be proud of how far I've come in some areas, and then there's other areas still to look into, and I'm not like, damn, I should have done that already, and how come
And that's going to be your whole life. It's my whole life. I'm
yeah,
always
it's
just
like
there's-
oh, which next thing is it the breath work? Is it the connecting with the physical more? Is it that I'm thinking more about the gut stuff? Like everyone's got different areas, so it's so.
yes.
And he's just like, oh, of course, she's perfect for you. 'Cause we've been talking about my stomach for ages. I'm supposed to be a gastroenterologist, so I'm thinking, but I'm shiny. I do all this stuff, but yeah, there's so much more to think about, which is
different layers.
and we've
There's
really loved chatting with you or listening to you. I love that. This is the first podcast in ages we had a hard time. I've never seen Mick have to put his hand up to ask a question.
I actually was going to say I want to honor and acknowledge all the people listening. I know that I can talk faster
Yeah.
and with a lot more passion because I do have a lot of different knowledge about a lot
Yeah.
of topics, and there's
It
so
comes
much to
out.
talk about, and there's so many things that I'm just like, oh, everyone needs to hear this. So I just want to thank your audience for listening to my excitement, and yeah, know that I can always share more at another time. And yeah, I really appreciate that you guys let me just continue the
It was
flow of conversation.
No worries. Thank you so much. Thank you. And we'll have your website on there as well for people that want to connect with you to start working on these things in a trauma-informed way as well, a bit at a time. Yeah. So we'll have that up there, piakynoch.com, very easy, and all of those other Facebook and Instagram details too. So
Awesome.
thank you so much, Pia.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. That's it for another episode. Thanks to our sponsor, Subtle Energy Sciences. Click the link in the show notes to access their full product range of quantum healing technology.
And thank you so much to our Patreon supporters. We're so grateful for your contribution to keep this podcast going.
If you'd like to join our Patreon, you can receive bonus full episodes, early release, and monthly readings and meditations.
We love to hear from you, so please comment on our YouTube channel or email us at mickandthepsychic@gmail.com.
I'm a certified hypnotherapist and timeline regression therapist. If you wish to contact me to explore the source of an issue you're facing, just book a session at hernhypnosis.com and include the promo code MATP for 10% off. You can contact me on Insta and Facebook at hernhypnosis.
Check out my website at optimisticxavier.com.au if you feel you'd like to connect with me as a psychic medium, spiritual mentor, or intuitive coach. Include the promo code MATP for 10% discount. You can also find me on Insta, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
We look forward to connecting with you again next time as we attempt to leave no stone unturned.
Bye.
All right, cool. I reckon that should be okay.